Welcome to MENA, the heartbeat of tech in MENA. We bring you raw stories and sharp insights from the founders, investors, and leaders building the region's startup ecosystem.
And if you are a founder in the trenches right now, or maybe an investor scouting your next big move, you are definitely in the right place.
Exactly. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are digging into this really fascinating industry voices piece, exploring Araya Ventures and their investment lead for GCC in the U.S., Kamyar Butt.
Yeah, which honestly serves as a perfect lens to view this much larger earthquake happening in venture capital right now. I mean, this isn't just a standard funding announcement.
Right.
It breaks down the actual gritty mechanics of how value is being created in emerging markets versus mature ones.
Totally. So our mission today is pretty clear. We're going to explore why a UK-based fund is just so aggressively expanding its footprint into the region. We're also looking at what specific crucible creates these irrationally ambitious founders.
Oh, I love that term.
Right. And finally, why almost everything you might believe about defensibility in tech, like the idea that a great product is your best moat, is, well, probably due for a massive update.
Yeah. And to really grasp how Araya makes their investment decisions, we have to start by looking at who is actually holding the pen and writing the checks.
Because that operational background completely dictates their investment lens.
Right, exactly. It serves as a filter for literally every pitch they hear.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Kamyar's journey to VC it's anything but a straight line. He didn't just get an MBA, join a bank, and, transition into venture.
No, not at all.
He grew up in San Francisco, quite literally surrounded by Silicon Valley's hyper-growth wave. Like, his father was building and exiting software companies.
So the whole ecosystem of startups and term sheets was just his normal baseline.
Exactly. But rather than jumping straight into finance, he went into the operational trenches. In university, he was running events and artist management, handling everything from grassroots sales to really complex operations.
Which, if you think about it, is the ultimate crash course in general management.
Oh, 100%.
You learn very quickly how to keep the lights on, how to manage unpredictable variables, and how to sell a vision to people before the product even exists.
Yeah, and then he pivots hard into the tech sector. He does business development at Block Inc., getting this massive masterclass in fintech at scale.
Right.
After that, he handles product, partnerships, and fundraising at ThinkSpot, working alongside Jordan Peterson. And eventually, he builds an offshore development business from the ground up.
Which was specifically designed to help early-stage founders get their MVP faster, right? Without burning through cash.
Exactly. And that hands-on experience of helping founders stretch a dollar naturally pulled him into angel investing. Fast forward to 2025, and it led him to Araya Ventures in London.
And Araya itself shares that exact same operational DNA. I mean, the firm was founded by Rupa Popat, who isn't a career financier either.
Right, just an exited founder.
Yeah, an exited founder and a former investment banker. She initially launched Araya through what they called a super angel fund, which was a $27 million pre-seed fund entirely focused on the UK.
Writing checks from like 150K to 450K to get founders off the ground.
Right. But then they expanded their vision and launched the Global Fund, shifting slightly later to the seed stage. And those check sizes moved up to between 450K and 750K, specifically targeting MENA.
To use an analogy here, it's like taking a team of mechanics who have spent years covered in oil, actually building engines from scratch and making them the judges at a car show. They aren't just reading the manual.
That's a great way to put it.
But I do have to push back here for a second. With all that heavy operator DNA sitting in the firm, is there a massive risk that they end up micromanaging the founders they invest in?
Oh, that's a fair question.
Like, if I am an investor who has built a logistics engine from scratch, it would take superhuman restraint for me not to grab the wrench the second my founder hits a roadblock.
Right.
How does Araya structurally prevent that kind of overstepping?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the source materials suggest this background does the exact opposite.
Wait, really?
Yeah, because when investors lack operational experience, they tend to manage via spreadsheet. If a monthly KPI dips, the purely financial investor panics, right? They demand immediate disruptive corrections.
Ah, I see.
But a team with shared operating experience fundamentally changes that dynamic. They evaluate a company not through some theoretical lens, but through the gritty realities of building and surviving.
Because they've lived through the exact same chaotic product launches.
Exactly. And supply chain failures. It builds a profound level of empathy. They don't micromanage because they know the chaos isn't a bug. It is a feature of the early stage.
Right. They know what a real existential crisis looks like versus just a standard Tuesday at a startup. So that explains their internal mechanics, but why point all that conviction and capital toward MENA?
Well, Rupa had already spent years building her network from her entrepreneurial days in Asia, so the firm had regional exposure.
But the article makes it clear this move was driven by a massive structural shift happening in the market right now.
Yeah, it all comes down to the critical transition from perception to proof. Historically, the biggest criticism levied against the startup ecosystem in the region by foreign outsiders was the lack of venture-scale exits.
And just to clarify, for anyone new to the funding side, a venture scale exit is when a startup either goes public or gets acquired for hundreds of millions or billions of dollars.
Right, and without those massive liquidity events, the ecosystem feels entirely theoretical to global LPs.
The limited partners like pension funds or university endowments, the ones actually supplying the capital.
Exactly, but that perception is shattering fast. Kamyar points out that credible, massive exits are finally happening, and that validates the ecosystem at scale.
It completely reshapes the psychological belief for everyone involved. Like, when a founder or an investor sees a massive exit happen in their own backyard, suddenly the impossible just becomes a reproducible playbook.
Yeah, and because of that undeniable validation, Araya started looking for structurally broken areas that other people were missing.
The massive gaps that foreign investors constantly misjudge.
Right, because those investors are evaluating the market through frameworks built for mature, neatly structured ecosystems.
And the biggest gap Araya found is logistics. Specifically, what the industry calls middle mile operations.
Oh, this part is wild.
Yeah, Kamyar spent a ton of time researching supply chain inefficiencies after Araya invested in a company called Supermile. And he noted that the middle of the supply chain is so broken it produces almost 10x cost asymmetries.
10 times.
10 times. That isn't just a pothole in the supply chain. That is a missing bridge. I mean, think about it. Have you ever encountered a market inefficiency so glaring it almost feels like a typo on a spreadsheet?
Right, it doesn't even look real.
Why is the middle mile, which is essentially getting goods from a port to a local distribution center, so uniquely broken that it costs 10 times more than it should?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look at the physical and regulatory realities on the ground. Like, if you are moving goods in the UK, a truck drives down a neatly paved M1 motorway.
Right.
It crosses no borders, the regulations are standardized, and the addresses are perfectly mapped on GPS.
It's seamless.
But in emerging markets, that same middle mile journey might involve fragmented customs protocols between borders, variable infrastructure where a paved road suddenly turns to BERT,
Oh, wow.
and a heavy reliance on cash transactions rather than automated digital payments. A journey that should take 2 hours might take 2 days.
And foreign investors look at that and see a reason to run away.
Exactly. But Araya looks at that 10x inefficiency and sees astronomical value creation for whoever actually solves it.
But you cannot solve a problem that complex and that messy with a standard approach.
Hmm.
You need a very specific, constraint-driven type of founder to tackle that.
Which brings us to what Kamyar famously calls the irrationally ambitious founder. The source material draws a really sharp contrast here. He looks at the UK, a highly mature venture environment, sitting comfortably between East and West. It produces incredibly sophisticated founders. But, ironically, that maturity can unintentionally constrain ambition.
Because when a market is highly regulated and neatly defined, you know the rules too well.
Right. You end up playing safely within those established boundaries.
Whereas in MENA, Kamyar says there is a lack of a ceiling. The ecosystem is younger, it is evolving at breakneck speed, and the founders are shaped by totally different, often harsher environments.
Yeah, operating through broader geopolitical, economic, and societal instability.
And that shared experience of instability forges an incredible level of resilience. You don't panic when a vendor falls through because, well, you've navigated much worse.
And something else Kamyar highlights that you rarely see quantified on a venture term sheet is trust.
Oh, that's interesting.
He notes that there is a uniquely high level of business trust in the region simply because people have had to rely heavily on each other to survive through periods of high uncertainty.
That constraint-driven mindset breaks a lot of outsider assumptions, too. Take execution speed, for example.
People assume emerging markets move slowly because of bureaucracy.
Exactly. But Kamyar argues the exact opposite. The execution velocity from starting a process to actually finishing it is remarkably fast.
Furthermore, they operate with extreme capital discipline. Venture funding wasn't just handed out on the back of a napkin pitch historically. Founders had to learn ruthless efficiency early on just to survive.
Right.
And that survival instinct leads to an incredible pivot in strategy, specifically regarding distribution creativity. Kamiya makes a bold claim here. He says, products aren't really the defensible part anymore, distribution is.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because wait a minute. As founders, as investors, as tech professionals, aren't we taught from day one that building a stellar 10x product is everything?
Yeah, the classic Silicon Valley mantra.
Right. If you build the best software, the market will adopt it. So how can distribution actually be the ultimate moat while the product takes a back seat?
It is a bitter pill to swallow for product purists, I know. But Kamyar's point is rooted in modern technological reality. Technologically speaking, anybody can build almost anything now.
With the rise of AI coding assistants and off-the-shelf API.
Exactly. The barrier to entry for building a beautiful, functional product has plummeted to basically zero. So those established SaaS playbooks where you just run a Facebook ads, set up a Stripe payment gateway, and watch the recurring revenue roll in.
They cannot just be copy-pasted into MENA.
Right, because the underlying infrastructure for that playbook doesn't exist uniformly. You can't just plug in standard payment gateways if a massive portion of your fragmented market still prefers cash-on delivery.
Wow, yeah. So to win, founders have to build highly localized commercial strategies entirely from scratch.
Precisely. Figuring out how to actually get your product into the hands of a fragmented market navigating local vendor relationships, setting up physical logistics networks, understanding microcultural buying habits, that grueling groundwork is the actual moat.
Let me make sure I'm translating this correctly. If you figure out that complex, localized distribution network, it doesn't matter if some kid in a dorm room codes a slightly prettier version of your app.
Yep.
Nobody can just swoop in and steal your market share because the competitor still has to spend 3 years building the local relationships and figuring out the cash-on-delivery logistics.
Yes. The distribution network protects the product. That is the exact mechanism of defensibility today.
That makes so much sense.
And since localized distribution is the only real defense, investors simply cannot write checks from 1,000 miles away and expect to understand the game they are playing. They have to be physically embedded in the ecosystem.
Which brings us to the trap of remote optimization. We all use tech to save time, right? We automate emails, we take meetings from our living rooms.
Oh, constantly.
But Kamir warns that if you over-index on remote investing, you lose your creativity.
Yeah.
You miss out on the subtle cues of relationship building, and you completely lose the local context that makes or breaks a company.
This raises an important question. How often do we let the convenience of a video call replace the productive friction of being in the room?
So true.
Global venture patterns can show you what is theoretically possible in a spreadsheet, but local context dictates what is practically executable on the ground.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Take a hard look at your own operations. Are you over-relying on Zoom? Are you optimizing yourself out of that crucial local friction that sparks real messy innovation?
Yeah, and Araya is putting their money where their mouth is here. They are dedicating a significant portion of their capital to the region and actively opening physical offices to ensure they don't fall into the remote trap.
And the timing for that physical presence is critical, isn't it?
Very. Kamyar outlines a specific 5 to 10-year outlook where regulatory frameworks in key markets are actively moving from ambiguity to structure. We are currently sitting in this massive in-between stage.
Which is arguably the absolute best time in history to build. You aren't just operating within an industry. You are sitting down with regulators and literally writing the foundational rules for it.
Exactly.
You get to help shape the legal framework for fintech or health tech or logistics.
And Araya's ultimate goal isn't just to be a dominant regional player while this happens. They want to build a cross-geography platform.
Connecting founders globally from day one.
Right. Bridging the UK, the US, Asia, and they are even exploring expanding into Africa.
And the consensus for the founders they work with is that they absolutely love this approach. Founders don't want to build their life's work with a regional ceiling in mind.
No, they want that global reach.
Araya is giving them a direct pipeline to global markets. It means founders don't feel like they have to physically leave the region, pack up, and move to London or San Francisco just to achieve global success.
It facilitates amazing knowledge transfer, talent mobility, and shared resources across borders. It creates a fascinating dynamic within the ecosystem. The hyperlocal resilience and distribution mastery we talked about is suddenly paired with massive, frictionless global access.
Which leaves us with this one final provocative thought to chew on. We have spent this deep dive talking about how founders are building extreme resilience, dealing with massive structural gaps like the 10x logistics asymmetry, and mastering grueling localized distribution purely out of necessity.
Yeah.
Well, what happens when those founders start exporting those battle-tested playbooks back into comfortable, mature markets like the US or the UK? Will these constraint-driven founders eventually outcompete heavily funded Western startups on their own turf, simply because they are used to operating on a much harder difficulty setting? It is a power shift we might be seeing sooner rather than later. For more stories like this, subscribe to Buy Newsletter and stay updated on the latest in MENA's tech and startup ecosystem.